Hello and welcome to Gardening at 58 North. In this video I'd like to show you how to force hyacinth bulbs. I'm not going to show you how to plant them, it's fairly straightforward planting hyacinth bulbs, but I'll tell you all the techniques and procedures you have to go through to successfully force them without any major problems. So first of all, you want to get a nice dish. If you're doing it in your house, you'll want one without holes in the bottom, or you'd want a saucer underneath so you don't get any spillage. What I've done here is I just went to my local charity shop, found this lovely oven dish. It's nice Art Deco style. I'm quite into Art Deco, so I quite like this one. I'm going to give it a little clean. This has been outside for a while. So what you want to do is get some bulb fibre. That's the ideal compost. You can use multi-purpose compost, but bulb fibre is the best, as it gives a really good balance of moisture retention, but it's also very free draining, so the bulbs won't rot. And then you want to plant the bulbs with just the very tips of the green shoots coming out the top. My bulb here is actually just a little bit too shallow, so I've had to plant them a little bit higher than I should have, but you can see this one here is planted at the perfect height. The top of the bulb just poking out, so as a new shoot comes out the whole bulb is covered, which gives it so it's nice and secure, but it's close enough to the surface that it comes out nicely. So these are 5 hyacinth bulbs that I bought back in September, October time. Now what I've done is, once I've planted them, I've had them somewhere cold and fairly dark. Light doesn't really matter, but it helps if it's somewhere dark because it's often less cold. So the reason for that is when these plants are in the wild, they're in this. It's summertime. So basically when you buy a bulb, it's dry, it's not growing. The bulb thinks it's summertime and that's when it's dormant. And then you want the bulb to think that it's then coming into autumn and winter, because the bulb naturally flowers in spring. So what you have to do is make the bulb think it's gone for a winter in order for it to flower. Otherwise it will just think it's still summer and it won't bother growing. So once you've planted it and you made the compost a little bit damp but not too wet, because you don't want it to be waterlogged, you can then place it in a cold location. Now the cold temperatures will encourage these bulbs to grow roots, and whilst it's cold, as long as if it's below 5 degrees, they won't do anything but root production. They won't grow any shoots. If it's above 5 degrees, they'll probably do a bit of roots and shoots. If it's above 10 or 15 degrees, they won't really grow any roots, they'll only do shoots, or they'll stay completely dormant. So you want to have this in a nice cold location, about 5 degrees. You can go right down to 0, but they can't take any hard frost when they're in active growth. And you want to keep it in that location for as long as possible, really, at least a month or 2. The longer you keep it in the cold, the better the flowering will be. One of the problems is if you bring it to the warmth too quickly, the top half will start growing, and the flowers and the leaves won't have any roots to sustain their growth. So they won't grow very large, and they just won't do very well generally because the roots won't be big enough to support them. So once it's been growing like that for a few months, you can then bring it to a slightly warmer position with bright light. Bright light is so that the plants don't get too leggy, and the slightly warmer position will then encourage them to put on the top growth and the flowers and the leaves. Now you want it to be cool, probably about 15 degrees. If it's any warmer than that, you can force the plants to flower whilst they're too short. So for example, if you had this in a really warm location, this top growth here would flower and it wouldn't grow much taller, it would just stay very small, but you want it to grow right up, have a fully formed flower. So you bring it somewhere warmer, and then once it is a decent height, then you can bring it into the 20 degrees or more and it'll flower nicely. So I'm going to set these up on a time lapse to let you see how they grow. Those I'll be putting up on my website later on. Hopefully they will have fully formed. It's been a bit sketchy because we've had a very warm autumn, and what would have been a cold enough autumn normally, it's been too warm this year in Scotland, so they've actually been putting on more top growth than I would have wanted. And these 3 in the middle, for some reason, they were growing a long time before these other 2. But now these other 2 are really fattened up. I've decided it's time to take it inside and it's time to warm it up. When you're keeping your plants cool, you really don't want to be taking them into the warmth until they got really fat buds like this. If it's taking a very long time, just increase the temperature a little bit, but as long as it's below 10 degrees, because when you start going over 10 degrees, then you can start getting issues with the flower formation. So keep this at about 5. As I say, if after 2 or 3 months it isn't fattening up, you want to just increase the temperature to 10, and then hopefully it will start to grow. Any more, you'll compromise the flowering. And so that's pretty much it. As I say, the longer you can give them a chilling period, the better they'll flower. But if you want them forced for Christmas, you have to start in September, give them a couple of months, and then start giving them warmth after that, and they should be flowering for Christmas. But you can also gauge it. If they're going too quickly, just take them somewhere a bit cooler. If they look like they're not growing fast enough, just give them a bit warmer. As I said, the main issues are bringing it into the warmth too quickly, the flowers open before they're fully up, or you get a lot of leaves and not enough flowers. You can see I've had a little bit of that issue this year. These leaves are quite a lot taller than these flower shoots. But I'll bring it into the warmth and I'll give you guys a time lapse so you can see how these 5 develop. I would have liked these a little bit bigger, but we'll just have to do with those 2 being a bit smaller. Unfortunately, even though the bulbs were put in all at the same time, I did actually pick 2 different varieties of bulbs, which is why they haven't all flowered. So if you're making a display, I would use all the same type of bulb. Otherwise you might have issues like this where they're not all flowering at the same time. So that's how to force your hyacinth bulbs. And I might give you guys an update when this one's in full flower, so just come back for more videos.